Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson, and thanks for joining us for this special On the Road edition. We're coming to you from the Detroit Historical Museum in Midtown. Today's program is part of our One Detroit commitment to examine the city's most important issues. And now that the 2017 elections are over, we're going to take a closer look at where the city stands now and where it's headed. I'd like to welcome our audience members and, of course, invite viewers at home to comment on Facebook or on Twitter. Prior to the elections, we wanted to find out what Detroiters thought were the top issues in the city and what they thought officials should be doing to create a better city. Here's what they had to say.
Tell me what you need. Tell me now. Tell me what you need. Tell me.
They're building up downtown, which is good. They have to have the revenue coming into the city, which is very important, but you cannot neglect the neighborhoods.
Folks think that they have excuses, but no, we just need real resources.
I definitely believe that the city of Detroit could definitely do better with the housing. I mean, I know that that's just going to be like a huge process.
You pay your police officers like $15 an hour. You can't pay people $15 an hour and expect them to come out here and risk their lives to control this. To me, where it's like they're saying, they'll figure it out. They'll be all right.
Let's just get outside of Midtown and downtown. Let's get into the inner urban areas that really need the help.
Regional transit and 24-hour bus routes, we want to make sure that that's reliable. We want to make sure that their communities are being included in community development. We want to make sure that block clubs are being, asked about their opinions and what's happening in their neighborhood.
Keep up the spirit and keep it inclusive and keep moving forward.
Okay, the 8 incumbents on the ballot for Detroit City Council were all re-elected. Joining me now are 2 of them, Raquel Casteneda-Lopez, who represents District 6, and James Tate, who represents District 1. Thank you both for being here. So I want to start with just jumping off the tape there that we saw. How is Detroit doing from the perspective of your council seats and your districts? The progress that we're seeing downtown, midtown. Is it visiting in District 6? Is it visiting in District 1? I'll start with you, Councilwoman.
Sure. So actually, a lot of my district includes downtown and
right.
midtown.
You are the
so
downtown
yes.
councilwoman, right?
But in contrast, I also have some of the most impoverished neighborhoods in the city, and one neighborhood in particular, which is the highest concentration of blight in the entire city. So definitely, as I go out door knocking, you can see the sharp contrast between downtown, midtown, and neighborhoods like the Midwest area, as well as Delray, as well as the Boynton Schaefer communities. And so I think the challenge that lies ahead is really balancing the needs and meeting communities where they're at, recognizing that some neighborhoods may not have any block clubs. So how do you work with those communities to kind of establish what I call that neighborhood infrastructure so that they're included in the conversations moving forward?
Yeah, James?
Yeah, well, when we look at downtown really exploded faster than any of us really anticipated. I mean, being on city council when we were going through bankruptcy is a totally different story. And so when you have billionaires and millionaires, and I say this all the time, when you have millionaires and billionaires who are looking to invest, they can turn things around really quickly with resources. And that's what we have in downtown.
Yeah.
So when you look at downtown, the city of Detroit, the government, we're not doing as much as people think we're doing. When you have Dan Gilbert, who purchased, I think, 98 buildings himself alone, that really, and he's not sitting on these buildings, he's actually doing things with them. So it makes it a lot easier, if you will, to see a change, a turnaround in downtown. When you start looking at what we have in our neighborhoods, when we start talking about the socioeconomic issues, a lot more difficult to change and turn around.
Yeah. So what happens in the next 4 years that makes that look different 4 years from now? Lots of the narrative around the elections this year was about this difference, this gap. Where do we go so that we're not doing that 4 years from now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, it really speaks to meeting each neighborhood where they're at and identifying there's no one blanket policy that's going to help us move forward as a city. And we can't just focus on kind of building the core and expect kind of trickle-down economics to then spread into the neighborhoods. It has to be going out, doing the grassroots organizing, meeting people where they're at, and helping neighborhoods become their own developers and attract the type of investment that downtown is, but in a different way. And really, I think that's one of the beautiful things about the city in of itself is that these neighborhoods have been sustaining themselves. They've come up with creative alternative economies, figuring out how to kind of get things done and bring services to their communities, but we need to kind of support and help them capitalize on that even more.
Yeah, and I think we've got to get folks excited about the city of Detroit again. I mean, when you hear about all of the greatness and all these great things that's happening in downtown and Midtown, and you look around the corner, you look across the street, you look outside your window, and you see the same stuff you saw 10 years ago, it really is a downer for people looking to try to stay in the city of Detroit. So for me, the goal is to make sure that we don't stop the progress that's happening in the city. That's very important. So when we look at the policies that we create, we've got to make sure that it is not prohibitive for this development to come. But we also have to look at how do we get our folks ready and prepared for these new jobs that are going to be available as a result of the construction. But then also, how do we get them inside of those buildings? Yeah. Not just work on skilled trades, but also management and actually potentially owning some of that land themselves, either in downtown or within our neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm going to say something and ask you both to react to it. It's a criticism I hear sometimes of the council, but this council is completely under the thumb of Mayor Mike Duggan, that it's not independent enough, it's not adversarial enough, it's not sticking up for some of the issues that maybe he is ignoring. Is that true?
I think I have a track record.
I was going to say, I know it's not true for you.
Maybe not for me, but no, I mean, the mayor and I have definitely had contentious conversations and have butt heads many times and agreed to disagree in a respectful manner. There's still some fundamental things that we aren't on the same page on, but I have confidence that we can continue to grow and learn how to, come to some point of compromise. I would, at least speaking from my standpoint, I don't think there's always been a rubber stamp at the table. And even if a vote has gone maybe in a way that I didn't support, I think we've helped push the conversation forward to ask the tough questions and make sure that there's transparency and accountability. And I think moving forward, you'll see a lot more of that, given that things have kind of stabilized, and now we're really getting down into the trenches of looking at some systemic issues.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the city of Detroit, we're kind of used to like the jousting, if you will, from the legislative branch and the executive branch. And if you don't see it, sometimes you don't believe that it's happening, the push and pull. So I think for me, it's been a very concerted effort to make sure that it's not that back and forth public bickering. We certainly have a difference of agreement behind closed doors. And there have been some times where, as a result of that, some of these issues or within the projects, proposals, and plans have changed and had some amendments. Sometimes they didn't, and that's the push and pull, the sausage making, if you will, of government. Sure. But I think because we're so conditioned to an extent to expect a fight, and if we don't see it, we don't think that it's
a good fight, right?
The city likes a good fight, but city likes success. And I think once we start seeing, residents start seeing more successes in the neighborhood, it helps more engagement and it helps more unity. So I don't think that we're in a situation where things are not happening in the neighborhood. It's just not happening as quickly and as tangible, if you will, if that's a word, people would like to see.
Yeah. James, I want to ask you, because this was your first term serving as a district representative. You had 4 years before that where everybody was elected at large. Talk about the differences in trying to represent essentially your neighborhood first and then the areas around it as opposed to the whole city.
Well, it's certainly different. And I always say it was an honor to be a part of the last at-large council and the first council by district. When you look at how you represent people, the expectation level was higher from a district standpoint. I know when we first went to districts, I was completely against it because it felt like it was outside forces. This is after the Kilpatrick situation and Monica Conyers and all of that stuff. And people were just looking for change. I'm like, we don't have to change if we don't need to. But now being a district council member and seeing the other side, I love it so much more because it really gives you an opportunity to reach out and touch and really be responsible for a particular area. And it allows the residents to know who's responsible for their particular neighborhood. But what it does do, I think, unfairly, is it gives the expectation level that we have more power
you can fix things,
than we do. I mean, we're still legislators at the end of the day. Write laws and ordinances, approve contracts, approve the budget. That's what we do. But with the district concept, it gets you a lot closer. You get more complaints. You know who to go to. But the expectation level is that we have more power from an executive side. Yeah. And then you always have to go through a civics lesson with folks to explain to them why
what you can do,
you cannot get it done, but you still fight for it.
Yeah. Councilwoman, I'm going to talk to you or ask you about your district, which is in many ways the most diverse district in the city, not just culturally, racially, but also in terms of you have downtown, which is a businessy district. Then you have really different neighborhoods. How have you found the challenge of sort of representing all of those different people?
Sure. I think the District 6 success really will indicate the city's success in a larger level. But it is about managing the expectations of homeowners versus renters, the most polluted neighborhoods to some of the cleaner neighborhoods, again, the most wealthy and educated communities to some of the most impoverished neighborhoods. And I think, again, it's about meeting people where they're at, tailoring your services and delivery to those unique needs of each individual community. And that is not easy. And then it's kind of like, as Councilmember Tate mentioned, is just managing expectations and being very transparent and honest about what you can and can't do. But the District 6 really highlights, I think, that tension around gentrification, around who belongs, around the divisions between different racial groups and neighborhoods. And I'm honored to serve in this role. It is really exhausting at times. But I think if we're able to be successful in District 6, then you'll see that spread citywide.
Yeah. Quickly before we end, I want to ask you both about the marijuana ordinances that passed. Both of them passed on Election Day. Councilman Tate, I know you wrote the old ordinance, or it had a lot to do with that. Talked about your reaction to what we're dealing with now.
Not because it peels back something that I put in place, taking the personal stuff out of it, but it peels back a lot of the protections that we put in place within city government, within those particular ordinances. And I always talk about this one because it's the most plainly explainable example. They remove the boundaries away from a dispensary and a daycare center.
Right.
To me, that's like, why would you do that? You can tinker with all other things. Why that one? So I think it's going to be a challenge for us. I have a meeting with the law department this week to identify what our legal avenues are. There are other individuals outside of city government who are looking at legal ways to express their rights as well. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be real interesting, but disappointed that we had to go this route, but here we are.
Kind of the same, and even under the previous legislation, a lot of them were kind of pushed into industrial areas, which District 6 has a higher concentration of industrial areas. So there's already kind of an imbalance that we are seeing, but I think making sure people are educated, knowing what the law allows for, so they can be their own advocates and fight for their communities.
Okay, thanks both of you for being here, and congratulations on the big wins last week.
Thank you for having us.